Bear down, Bears fans. Another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast coming your way. Pat the designer, Tommy Waddle in the building on a Friday. The perfect person to have here with all of the offensive questions that we have on this team.
I think there's more questions than I have answers. So buckle up.
Well, there's 5 questions up front. We got problems.
That's true. And I never played offensive line at any stage, so I don't have any answers there.
We got to talk about this team as a whole heading into this game. Back at Soldier at least, but heading into a game versus the Rams where you can't overlook what Matthew Stafford can do. Yeah. And he's had more than a few really good throws in this building in his time and throughout his career. So got to break that down. Got to look at some of the utilization. I've been listening to you, Tommy. It doesn't sound like you're too big of a fan of how the Bears are utilizing DJ Moore.
I'm not, no.
And
not
I have to agree with you.
You know, you look at the film, and let's get in the weeds with some statistics first and foremost. DJ's got, I believe, 19 catches for 167 yards. That comes out to 8.8 yards per reception. And you look into some of the other analytics, his average depth of target is 7.6 yards, which ranks him 72nd out of 91 eligible receivers. And when you look at it, that to me, just the statistics, that's not getting enough out of your best offensive player. If you do watch the film, I know what they're trying to do. They're getting the ball to him in some wide receiver screens and some bubble screens and some quick outs because they want to get him involved. And I totally agree with that. But I think you have to use him in a more advantageous way. Like DJ's built for the middle of the field.
Yes.
He's built for the entire field. But, you know, I need to see them run him on some deep ends and some deep crossers and some, quick posts, some bang eights, as they call them, skinny posts, and let him be more part of the offense in the middle of the field. And so far, we really haven't seen that. So I think what you're doing is you're limiting your offense by not taking advantage of your best player and some of the stuff he can do. DJ can do it all, but I just would like to see it feels like initially, and I think it may just be a result or a product of the offense that they run, where DJ's the X and the Z is Rome, who's a bit off the line of scrimmage. And Rome's the one running like the deep ends and the crossing routes. And I'm not suggesting Rome can't do that, but maybe flip it up. Maybe instead of asking DJ to run a bunch of clearing routes and some of these route concepts, let's get DJ more involved in the middle of the field and take advantage of what he does so exceptionally well. So from that perspective, I would hope that they would do that. I think, Pat, you got to look at what they've done through 3 weeks, and you've got to self-scout. It's never too early to self-scout and realize what you are doing well and what you're not doing well. And then you accentuate what you do well, and the other stuff you're not doing well, you kick it to the side. So I think they would be wise to kind of condense the game plan and what they're asking these guys to do. And then when you find your rhythm, you can always add on. You can always add to the game plan 2-3 weeks down the road. But right now, I think what they need to do is get their best player more involved downfield and maybe, what did Joe Madden used to say? Do simple better.
Simple better.
And I think that they would all benefit from doing simple better. The run game, the receivers, even the quarterback, everybody, the offensive coordinator for sure. Just do simple better.
That is a much nicer way than what I've been saying it. Because because how I was taught growing up, doing electrical, playing drums growing up, they always said KISS. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
Which it's stupid. People get offended. And, oh, you calling me stupid? No, but it's
just
it's a phrasing. But it's so. I feel like in so many moments this season, and this is not just this season. This has been the last few years of dealing with Luke Getsy. Heck, we can go back to Matt Nagy if we want to. For some reason, we get coordinators in here who just love to get in those short yard gains and then go, you know what would be great here? I know David Montgomery just ran 9 yards forward, but what if we go left and right?
Yeah.
And I just don't understand the ideology of not trying to push forward, especially when you have an offensive line that's struggling, which has been a consistent theme of the Chicago's Bears teams through those years as well. And especially when, you've got questions on which personnel you want to use, protect them as much as you can by going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think what they did at the goal line last week in Indianapolis, there were so many things wrong with it. I think play design was a bad idea. I think you go to the second, people are upset about the wildcat snap to Khalil Herbert. I think it was on first down.
Yeah.
Teams run that.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I am too. You just bet on that. I don't know if it was that play or the second play. Darnell Wright completely whiffs.
Yes.
Like there's a hole, and the hole immediately goes away because Darnell Wright drops his head, and the defensive guy across from him just jumped around him and made the play.
Right.
That's player execution. Third down play on the goal line. I don't know why. I mean, a cardinal sin for a coordinator is to ask a small to block a big. There's no reason for Carter to be blocking the guy on the end of the line. That's bad play design, and you can't have bad play design on your, on your own 40, much less at their 2 or their 1. And then the final speed option, I don't know what they were trying to accomplish. That's not a play that I would have run down there. I'm not an offensive coordinator. So I thought the play design, what you're asking them to do, is flawed. And then the execution, whatever it was they were asking them to do, I don't believe part of the job description was for 4 of your linemen to fall down.
Yeah.
So a bad play call
and player execution,
is then multiplied. The bad is multiplied by a lack of execution. So if it was up to me, and this is where I say you self-scout and you start to do things in a more simplistic way. When you're in short yardage, and I would say even just overall for their running game, I know what they're trying to do. It's a heavy zone. A zone-based scheme.
Yeah.
Well, they're not good at this point going lateral. What they're better at is putting a hand in the ground and going forward. It's an easier ask for the offensive line. And with that in mind, what I would have preferred that they do at that moment is let's just line up. We're struggling. Again, let's limit the number of plays we're asking these guys to execute. And let's just turn around and hand it to our 225-pound running back in Roschon Johnson 4 times and just try to get in the end zone.
Who had just gotten you a 4th and 1.
Yeah, and if that works, great. Do it again. If then they start to defend that, then you can branch out. Right. But I think it's just look. I'm a patient man by nature. I have been married for 33 years and have 4 beautiful daughters. And quite often we get in the car at 6:30 for a 6 o'clock dinner reservation. So you have to learn to be patient. So it's part of my DNA. So I am going to be patient because there's a lot of.
So it doesn't get better.
Marginally.
Okay.
What gets better is you're willing of tolerance with it. You know what I mean? It's just the reality of the environment. Know your personnel.
Right. KYP. Right. KYP on the family.
So look, I think you simplify this thing, and until you get your rhythm and you get your quarterback going, let's keep it simple. I was so disappointed in what they weren't able to do last week in Indy against a front 7 that was giving up 237 yards per game on the ground through 2 weeks. And then we go down there and run it 28 times for 63 yards. Yeah. There's a problem here. There's an execution problem for sure, but there's also, I think, a schematic issue that isn't resonating. So I would simplify it. That's just me. Get it going. You're going to have an opportunity to do just that against the Rams. They're not very good stopping the run. They give up 177 yards per game on the ground. That ranks 30th. So take advantage of their weakness. And then just, and when that starts to work, then you maybe branch out and you diversify. But at this point, I think you just gotta huddle everything in and keep it simple.
I don't want to lose the DJ Moore point is because as you break down this game, we can all go into a rabbit hole of why it's so bad. Yeah. But my question is, when you watch the tape, when you look at this offense, why is it so consistently? Because we're through 2 offensive coordinators that pretty much run the same scheme. The short passing game cannot be a passing game that happens in front of the line of scrimmage. It has to be the bubble screens. It has to be those things behind the line of scrimmage that so often not, right? We've been arguing player execution on those for 2 years with Chase Claypool last year and now this year with some of the blocking that we've seen out of these guys on the screens. What is it about this offense that they don't want to go in front of the line of scrimmage on plays?
I'm not sure I can give you a really good answer. I mean, the offensive coordinator would be the guy that would answer that better than I. But again, I look at it. They run a ton of bubble screens. They run a ton of wide receiver screens. I think the essence of that is you do want to get the ball in the hands of your best players and let them do their thing. I think it's also a way to circumvent some of the pressure that exists consistently because your offensive line has struggled to protect your quarterback. But my problem, again, is as you self-scout, how many of these bubble screens have worked? These guys, honestly, you put on the tape, and I like them all. They're all really good players. they're taking turns missing blocks for each other.
Yes.
You know, I don't know what it is, but they're not helping each other out. So why don't we just take that out of the equation a little bit? You know, the quick out routes are really good. I'm a huge fan. It was one of I could never run deep routes. So I was more of a slant guy than I was a nine runner. But especially again, and this goes into scheme, when you're facing a Colts team that is predominantly zone. Gus Bradley's been in this league for decades, and he is a zone, defense coordinator. And coming into that game, they were playing cover 3 55% of the time. And you know what works against cover 3? You run your combo routes, you slant flat. If the guy in the middle jumps the slant, you throw the flat. The guy jumps the flat, you throw the slant. Yeah. I mean, like, those are really simple things. I think if you watch football around the league, I think if you watch the 49ers Rams tape, you see a ton of that. I think you saw it in the game against, the Giants and the Cowboys on Thursday night as well. You saw the Giants run a lot of slants, and you saw the Cowboys run a lot of slants. And I would like to see them do that, as opposed to throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage and then rely on whether it's your other wide receiver to get a block or get your tackle or your tight end at the line of scrimmage to flare out and go pick somebody up. I don't know. There is an element that it is part of that offense. It really is. Yeah. And it is a useful part of the offense. But right now it's not working.
Right.
So I wouldn't keep going to it, to be honest with you. Yeah. I think that the other thing that I saw that worked well was max protect, keep 2 tight ends in. You keep your back, and if the blitzer doesn't show, he can get out to the flat. But there were 2 plays: the deep ball to Rome and the deep cross to Rome were both max protect, play action pass. And you've given DJ a ton of money, rightfully so, because DJ is a great player. You drafted Rome with a top 10 pick. Why don't we see some more max protect and let these 2 guys go out there and win their battles?
Right.
Because that's where the strength of your team is. So, it all makes sense when you're sitting the day after watching the film and you're thinking about it. It's got to make sense in the moment. And right now, a lot of it doesn't make sense. But like, getting back to the point of being patient, I do still have a degree of patience. It wears thin when you see the same guys make the same mistakes, whether it's an offensive lineman, it's your offensive coordinator, whoever it is. That's when you lose some of the patience. But, it was an interesting – I saw Kirk Cousins. I think, who did they play? The Falcons played the Eagles the second game of the season.
The Eagles, yeah.
After the game, Falcons win the game. They interviewed Kirk. Kirk's statement was, there's a lot of new here. So we're still learning, getting to know the tendencies of each other. And I think you can use that as part of the explanation, but it doesn't stop there.
It can't be the excuse, though.
Yeah,
because I feel like it's becoming the excuse of, well, this is new, we're figuring it out. You're 3 weeks into the season. You're having the same communication issues you were having week 1 of preseason. I mean, we've seen how many wide receivers not on the same page as the quarterback through 3 weeks of regular season football.
Well, that's a good example, though, of something that will come in time. Like, I believe wholeheartedly in Caleb. My faith in him has not waned a single bit. And you know how I feel about DJ. I think he's their best player. The first series, quarterback throws a back shoulder throw. It's a really good throw, except for DJ's running straight. So I don't know who's on the page and who's not on a page. But if you go back in time, because you're young, you may not, this may be before you, probably not. But when Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams were learning, it took a while. Yeah. Like, Aaron was pissed off quite a bit at Devontae Adams.
I remember that, yeah.
Then they became the best back shoulder duo in all of football. I think it will take some time. And I'm just focusing on that particular play for the quarterback and your best receiver to kind of know, if the corner, if you're running a 9 and a corner's on top of you, perfect opportunity to throw it to the back shoulder. And that's something that the receiver has to acknowledge and that the quarterback has to not acknowledge. And it's kind of, it's a verbal-less, being on the same page. But those are the types of things I think that I have patience for, those moments, not missing assignments, not putting a bad play, out there in crunch time. But stuff like that is where I would still preach to people who are a little bit, anxious, that those things are going to get better.
Right.
I do believe that. And I think we saw, like, even with Caleb, I highlighted the 2 max protect that I thought they ran really well. I thought in the second half that Caleb found his rhythm. The ball was coming out quick, and they worked the middle of the field too, whether it was with Cole or it was with Rome. Whoever it was, they worked the middle of the field, and he's really comfortable throwing the ball into tight spots because he's really accurate in those situations. And I think we saw some of that in the second half. So I'm still patient.
Yeah.
But I'm losing my patience, if maybe that's the best.
No, and because the things that, and I agree with you, I'm patient with Caleb.
Oh,
Caleb's going to be here.
Yeah.
I think that he is.
I have more patience with him than
anything else.
Yeah.
Where my patience runs thin is our conversations haven't changed. We've changed quarterbacks. We've changed offensive coordinators. We've changed everything about this team except for our head coach and our offensive line coach, who we had questions on last year. And then they were like, now you're the run game coordinator. And now both of those suck. And Chris Morgan. So I've got questions there. But the things where my patience runs thin on most is this looks like last year. This looks like we're staring down the barrel of 1-3, and then you're hoping to fight your way back. This looks like there's no answer for your offensive line questions. So you're going to go out and get whoever this year's Dan Feeney is just to add some offensive line depth. It's I think where most Bears fans' patience is running thin is we're tired of having the same conversations. And you felt like Ryan Poles was seeing a lot of the same things we were seeing.
Yeah.
And then he went out and got a young quarterback, put him behind an offensive line that's abysmal. And you're possibly in a situation where your head coach may be on the hot seat because he may not win enough games this year for you to keep him around. So you start the cycle all over. We've been in the cycle of suck for 6 coaches.
That's
now.
what Sylvie calls it. Yeah. Look, that's roster construction as well.
Yeah.
So, look, I have spent 18 months expressing my concern about the offensive line. And I could talk myself at the beginning of the season into, okay, if Braxton Jones takes another step and Tevin is available all 17 games and continues to play more consistently, and if Coleman Shelton can secure the interior of the line at center, and Nate Davis decides that this is really something he wants to do, and Darnell Wright that's a lot of ifs. That's a lot of, so I've been concerned about the interior of their offensive line for a couple of years now. And even going back to Justin, who was still a young quarterback.
Yeah.
And I'll bang this drum until everyone gets tired of it. I think all quarterbacks, especially young quarterbacks, are affected more by pressure that comes from in front of them versus the pressure that comes from the outside. Yes. And when you have a young quarterback, especially a rookie like Caleb, the last thing you want to have to worry about is that his center or guards are not securing the pocket. A guy's dropped into his lap. What it does is it speeds up the quarterback.
Yeah.
And at that point, now he's playing frantically and he's not in his own comfort zone. So, they were comfortable, obviously, with going to the gate with this offensive line. I don't know if they have buyer's remorse with regard to that, but I don't know what you do at this point because there's not an offensive lineman tree out there where you could just pluck guys.
I love the mock drafts. I don't know if you've seen these, or not mock drafts, mock trades where people are like, well, what if we trade Tyson Bagent to the Raiders for the Panthers second round pick for Andre James? And I'm like, why would the Raiders trade?
They're not going to.
They're for a guy that maybe they think is a starting quarterback, but get rid of their starting center.
You're not going
to like why? Like there's not. That's not going to happen this season.
Not in week 4. These are all issues that you have to address in the offseason. And I think that there was a bit of being presumptuous that what they put out there was going to be okay, especially for a young quarterback. And look, I've been an advocate too, that when you find a quarterback, even with his youth, that has a great feel in the pocket and plays the game in a very, he's really efficient with some of his movement, that he can help your offensive line.
Yes.
But you can't put it all on your rookie quarterback to make everybody else better. And I think he finds himself in a tough situation right now, but they've got to come up with some answers because this is the haymaking part of their schedule.
Yeah.
This is where you're supposed to win games. When you get to the back half of the schedule, if you haven't solidified some of that stuff, it's going to be a rough ride because everyone in your division is good.
Yeah.
And if you look inside the division too, it's like if you're going to compare teams, everyone in your division, the Packers, the Vikings, and the Lions have all invested in their offensive line.
Yes.
The Lions have 4 first-round picks. The 3 of their own and 1 free agent they signed was a former first-round pick from the Bengals. And I think the 5th offensive lineman's a third-round pick.
Yeah.
And it takes time. I get that. But to put a rookie quarterback behind the 4th best offensive line in your own division, you're asking for some issues.
Yeah.
You really are.
No, 100%. And it scares me because even the guys you have, right? You drafted Karan Amagaji this year. He's coming off a quad injury. Okay. Missed all of the summer program, missed all of the regular, or all of preseason, all the training camp, all of that. And the only thing that we keep hearing out of the Bears is, well, we just want to make sure he's ready. But did you draft a guy that you didn't think would be ready to play in the NFL?
These are all valid
because that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
It sounds like I get drafting a project. You don't draft projects in the third round.
No, and you know what, Pat? Like, there's a lot of conversation, and again, I just talked about it. They build these division opponents have all built their offensive lines. They're not all first-round picks. I mean, if you look at the Green Bay Packers, I don't know if they have a first-round pick that's on their own line. There's a couple second-round picks, a couple third-round picks, a seventh-round pick, I think, is manning the right tackle position. But they had I have no problem with them drafting Rome, but they had salary cap space, and they have a whole lot of draft currency too. Yeah. They have picks, so you could have moved back into the second round for a center.
That was my thing.
You could have drafted someone who maybe wasn't coming off an injury that could give you help right away. So I don't think you had to do one or the other. I think that the luxury that was built by Ryan Poles by managing things very, very well gave you the opportunity to do both. Yeah. And I don't think that the plan has worked out quite like they had hoped, especially at the line of scrimmage where nothing's really getting done at the moment.
When you look at this Rams game coming up this week, do you feel cautiously optimistic? Do you feel cautiously optimistic? A good way to say it. Like you feel like this is a game we should win.
But I felt that way about the Colts because I thought
that's the cautiously part.
I thought they were going to go to Indy and get themselves right against a front that was giving up 237 rushing yards a game. So you should be able to move the ball against the Rams. Yeah. Again, they give up 177 a game. It's a different front. So, I mean, it'll be really interesting to watch again, to get into the weeds about this. It'll be the first time they'll play an odd man front on early downs. You're going to have a nose tackle over the face of Coleman Shelton. How will they, game plan for that? But, you look at this Rams front and, if you watch them on film, there's plays to be made, but they play hard. It's a bunch of young guys that they've drafted. They've
Jared Verse over there.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
I would have loved a Jared Verse.
I think Frisk or whatever his name is also a rookie. He's playing well. They got a bunch of undrafted free agents playing linebacker for him, but they all play, pretty good defense. But there are plays to be made there. Yes. But they're going to stack the box and make you prove that you can run the football. And while they may not be a heavy blitz team, I would think in obvious passing situations, they're going to come after Caleb because other teams have done it and have had some success. So, and you flip it around on the other side, and it's really interesting. It's fun to watch. Like I was saying, I watched the 49er Ram game. Yeah. They've got better personnel. They've got really good offensive coaches that have been doing this a really long time. But the play design is really interesting. And what you see too is like the Rams, even without Puka Nacua and without Cooper Kupp, they still make plays in the passing game, but it's all tied to the running game. Like they're going to run it and run it and run it. And just when you think they're going to run it a fourth time, they're going to play action you. Their receivers are going to try to get behind you. And trust me, Matthew Stafford is not going to miss the deep throws the way that Will Levis and Anthony Richardson did. So, there are some holes in this Rams team, okay? There are some things that you should be able to take care of and take advantage of. But if you come in here thinking you're just going to walk on them because they're in your building, they showed you last week that they were capable of beating a better team because they were more sound in some of the things they were doing. So I guess the moral of the story is I expect them to beat the Rams. I expect the offense to make some improvement, but I wouldn't take this Rams team lightly.
Do you feel more confident when you hear the report from Jeremy Fowler and even Courtney Croney yesterday that the expectation is that Roschon Johnson is expected to be the lead back coming this week?
Yeah, I do. I mean, that leads me to believe that they have done some self-scouting and they have done some, some reality checking, so to speak, in what they're trying to do. And again, look, DeAndre Swift is going to get his carries and hopefully he'll find his rhythm. But at the moment right now, I trust them more as a fan running forward on their offensive line, going north and south. And I trust Roschon Johnson is going to hit that hole with force that the other guys maybe don't. I think Khalil Herbert is more elusive in the hole than what we've seen from DeAndre so far. Again, I'm not suggesting that, that he's not going to get his reps or his
Get him
snaps.
involved in the passing game, in my mind.
But you've got to, at this point, kind of again simplify things and do things that highlight what you're more capable of doing. And look, again, you can go back, or go forward in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 weeks and expand the playbook.
Yeah,
expand the game plan. But right now, I don't want to see them run 25 different plays, because they're not good at all of them right now. Highlight the stuff that you can do and just do it, okay? You may think you're pounding your head against the wall, and to a certain degree, maybe you are, but I think it's what they're most equipped to do right now.
What do you think, watching the tape, that you see that you're like, that's a go-to for them? That's something that they should be comfortable running every time.
Well, I think, running some draw plays, again, running more north and south than running, the lateral run game. And again, I'd go back to some max protection situations, come in with a heavy lineup. You'll see a lot of it from the Rams. They play a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, because they're without a couple of their other receivers, and they're still able to run their play action passing game. They just use different personnel. So I'd like to see the Bears do that. Maybe, not as much 11 personnel, bring in some tight ends, max protect, plays, use some play action, especially on first down. When they think you're going to run the football, maybe throw it in those situations. So, that it sounds easy. But I think
then you see it. then you see Coleman Shelton get thrown by another grown man into your running back. Maybe it's a little difficult.
That's true, but they have done a better job, and it makes sense when you've got more guys to block than they're sending.
Yeah.
The max protects will just naturally do the math. It'll work. And again, as I said, put the onus on your excellent receiving core to go out there and win your battles. And I think if you do that and stop leaving the weaker part of your team in one-on-one situations up front, I think you'll have more success.
And see, that's the part to me where personnel has to be, and importance has to be put on it. I love Cole Kmet. I want him out there. I want him out there as a tight end, though. Cole Kmet's not a good blocker. Like, he's an okay blocker, but like when you've got him out there consistently,
but he's your going to tight end. Beat. He's your guy that you're going to use and run pass option situations. Like, if you only use Cole in passing situations, you become way too predictable.
That's true.
So,
but if he's getting killed every week, the last 2 weeks his blocking has been absolutely atrocious.
There have been misses by Cole. There's no question. I think in the one they were trying to max protect at the end of the game when you had the strip sack fumble, that there's a good example of a lack of player execution. And that play, and I love Cole. Cole will be honest with you, and he'll be accountable. And he told you that was his mistake.
Yeah.
You got a double team. You got Mercedes Lewis, who's protecting the inside. Cole's got the outside. The only rule that you have to follow is, Cole, you can't get beat to the outside. You'll make sure if he's going to beat you, if Latu's going to beat you, then he's going to beat you to the inside where you have help.
Yeah.
So schematically, you can draw these all up. And even when the play is sound, guys still have to execute those plays. And a lot of people look, your tight ends are going to be asked to pass protect at times.
Yes.
Cole's 6'6" and 260 pounds. Latu's 6'5" and 265. Like, physically, that's it's a pretty even match.
Right.
So, like, it's not obscene to ask. Put on the film of the cat in San Francisco and watch Kittle, who's smaller, go out there and pass protect. Now, again, Kittle's one of the best in the league, but I don't think it's as odd as people believe when they see a tight end be part of the pass protection.
It's not odd to me, because I think, listen, I want to see more 12 personnel every week. It's what I want to go to. But my thing is, have the guys out there that you've seen be successful at it. And I know Mercedes Lewis basically got into the game 4 times. He's got 2 false starts. It's not a good ratio there. I want to see that changed up, but we know what Mercedes Lewis can do in the blocking game. To me, if you have him and Roschon Johnson back there, not every play, but on some of these plays where you want to max protect, I think that gives you a better chance. I think what the Bears have struggled at early on this season is giving yourself the best chance for the play to work without any of the problems you already have. You can't block up front. You've got offensive line issues. So give yourself that extra little bit. And I don't think that they've done that. And the DeAndre Carter play where he basically gets thrown into Khalil Herbert, that's the kind of personnel stuff that I see or even the Gerald Everett tight end screen where who was leading the way on that? Was it DJ Moore leading
One
the
of the
way blocking?
receivers,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm just like, just flip that.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather have the speedy guy running the route and the big guy blocking. Like it's almost, again.
Well, think about this as well.
Would you say do simple better? Yeah, that's a better way. I got to remember that
from
one.
Joe Madden. But look, you brought, and this will tell you where the frustration lies in some ways. They brought Gerald Everett in as pass catching tight end. He's had a nice career in this league catching passes. He's more of a, split out, get down the field more so than maybe Cole is.
Yes.
You brought in DeAndre Swift. You spent a pretty good chunk of change on both of these guys. Do you know what their contribution level at this point is? Gerald Everett has 3 catches for 0 yards, and DeAndre Swift has a combined 114 yards in the passing and the running game.
Yeah.
So you added these 2 pieces to this offense, and between the 2 of them, you've gotten 114 total yards out of them in 3 games. I can't imagine that Shane Waldron and Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus or any of them believed that bringing these guys in was going to result in that lack of production. So they got to find ways to get these guys involved in doing the things that they do best. The other thing, Pat, is look, I know you spent $8 million on DeAndre Swift, but if right now he's not the best option in your running game, then you have to pivot and go to Roschon Johnson and give him the bulk of the carries. And maybe I don't know if Ryan Poles is telling them, hey, he's our best back, we got to use him. I don't think that's the case because I don't think that's Ryan's personality. But it's up to the offensive coordinator to say, look, whether it's implied or not that we need to use DeAndre because we brought him in. If he's not the best fit now, then don't use him, regardless of what you spent on him bringing him in. And, these are all things that I think that they probably had a bit of a come to Jesus meeting about this week up at Hallis Hall. And hopefully you'll see them come out with a little different approach.
I think I'm sure there's been more things. I'm very sure there's been more things, but I think that hearing Roschon Johnson is expected to be the lead back this week feels like the first real Flus stepping outside of just being the defensive guy and saying, no, we're going to do this. That it feels like the first, I'm the head coach of this team. We're going to do this because we saw this work. The Cole Kmet touchdown is set up by Roschon Johnson catching a nice pass, running through an offensive line that still was falling over itself, right? Like you set these things up. This feels to me like Flus's first, and I'm sure there's been more things that I'm just not thinking of, but his first, like, I get what you're saying, but I'm the head coach, so you're going to put Roschon
Well,
Johnson
and I think he's, he hears every play call. Like, I agree with you 100%. I think just because he's a defensive-minded head coach doesn't mean he shouldn't be involved in what we're trying to do offensively as the game goes on.
Yeah.
If you're Coach Eberflus and you feel that the best way to attack this Colts defense last week is to run Roschon, you look at your offensive coordinator and say, look, whatever it was that we decided to set out to do, it's not working. We're having more success running the ball with Roschon. Give him the football. That's the job of the head coach. Yes. I know that Shane is basically the head coach of the offense, but the guy where the buck stops is with your head coach. Yes. And it is not beyond his authority to tell the offensive coordinator what he wants. Because at the end of the day, it's Flus's ass.
Yes.
So I would want to go out doing the things that I feel are most advantageous for my team and not rely on other people. I'm not saying he's the one that sits in and puts the offensive game plan together, but you're the head coach. You're the CEO. If you like something that your offensive coordinator isn't doing, then you step up and you make yourself heard and make sure that they're starting to do that.
And it's the first time we've seen him do it. I mean, it was with Luke Getsy, it was literally, all right, Luke, figure it out. It was very hands off. I got the defense. We'll get this running. You figure it out over there. I like this from Fluke. This feels like a head coach. This feels like the Mike Tomlins, the Bill Belichick's going in the room and going, hey, dog, I hear what you're saying. I understand what you're trying to tell me. No. And it's the first time that I think I've seen that from Matt Eberflus. Again, he's grown to me a lot as a coach this year. The wins have not reflected it, but I think there's
got to work on the timeout usage and the challenge flag stuff. But as a defensive minded coach, as a defensive coordinator, I still think he does a fantastic job. Yeah. But the role of the head coach branches out further than just that. And I think it's a great point that you make. Like, assert yourself. If you don't like what you see, like at the end of the day, it all falls at the, at the foot of your door. Yeah. So assert yourself and make sure that they're doing exactly what you want them to do as a head coach.
No, 100%.
And you, like you said, do you think other guys, and you think Mike Tomlin doesn't have a voice on the sideline during the game? You think Sean McDermott doesn't have a voice with what the Bills are doing offensively? You think Mike Vrabel didn't have thoughts and opinions on game day as the game was unfolding? All of those guys, defensive-minded coaches, are still responsible at the end of the day for the overall function of the organization. So I'm with you. I think if Flus wants to see it, then it needs to be done.
And that's the next step to me. When I get the third down and I haven't seen Roshan out there, flip the switch.
Yeah.
Hey, let's get the big boy in there.
Yeah.
Flip back.
It's great that it's great that you're having, this self-scout, exercise
now
during the week.
Yeah.
But let's not let it get to post-game, the post-mortem. We're looking at it and say, what we should have done is no. Like, these are smart guys. You know what's happening. Yeah. You know what's working and what's not working. So, that's the head scratching part of it.
I'm so sick of, I love it. I get it. We're only 3 weeks into the season, but you can only take accountability on it's my bad so many times before I'm like, is it your bad or are you bad?
It's a good question.
That's the next question. What makes me nervous about Shane is I don't remember those early weeks of Sean McVay where I was like, I don't think this guy can call plays. I don't remember those early weeks of Bill Belichick. Well, I guess Bill Belichick's a little different. Bill Belichick was getting his head kicked in, but not as a DC. Yeah, I mean, he was doing well as a DC. Yeah. Like, I don't remember. It's very rare to me where like you start off and you go, oh, this guy's not as good as we thought he was, and then by the end of it, you're like, oh, he's so much better.
Well, I mean, and especially this isn't Shane's first rodeo.
Yeah.
Like with Luke Getsy, this is the first time he ever, called plays. Shane has been a play caller in this league for several years. But again, he's like, know your personnel. When you hired Shane, he's a throw first and run occasionally offensive coordinator. So, you know what you're getting. To look at it now and go, why isn't Shane Waldron running the football? Well, I mean, because Shane Waldron really never did focus on running the football. I mean, we had a conversation with Brock Hewart, played in the league for a long time, and then now does the radio for the Seahawks game. We talked to him this offseason when they were deciding on who they were going to hire as the OC to replace Luke Getsy. And Brock was very, I wouldn't even say lukewarm. I think he was, against it. He was like, look, and for the reason that he really doesn't focus on running the football. And Brock's perspective wasn't at that time. I don't think they'd moved away from Justin, despite the fact it was the offseason. And he's like, if you want to play bully ball, this isn't your guy.
Yeah.
So they made a conscious decision that they were going to go with an OC who's a pass first guy. So, it's not like surprise.
No, I remember telling people in the offseason, I was like, guys, he's probably going to be 65-35. And Yerk yelled at me. He was like, you're too out of whack. You're 65-35. I was like, I know. I watched that, though.
Yeah.
I watched him just go, it's 3rd and 2. DK, 15 yards down the field. Let's see if we can hit him. Like, that's where.
And if it works, you ride with it. And if it doesn't work, you got to ask questions.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. Look, this is the NFL. And after week 1, I made the statement. I said, death, taxes, and bitching about your offensive coordinator. It's a given in Chicago. And for that game, I thought it was a relevant comment because if you go back and watch the film of week 1 against the Titans, there were plays to be made all over the field.
Yes, there were.
That was player error.
Yes.
You missed Keenan on a deep ball. You missed Carter on a deep ball. Keenan drops a touchdown pass. There are other plays that are wide open that because of offensive line mistakes, balls are getting tapped at the line of scrimmage. That lack of offensive production, I believe, was directly tied to a lack of player execution. But I also said at the time, look, when it comes time to storm the castle and put the boot on and kick your offensive coordinator for things that don't make sense, I will do that. And the more that they've gone on, especially against Indy last week, it's not out of bounds to question the offensive coordinator. I just think that you have to. This is the NFL. For me, it's always player execution first. What are guys doing? We're going to hold them accountable first, and then you don't ignore holding coaches accountable, but that's secondary. For me, that's secondary. But I think we've gotten to the point now, only through 3 games, where you can spray the infield. You can blame everyone, including the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, it's so funny because like that first game, I literally was like, every play that worked, Shane Waldron looks like a genius. Every play that didn't,
that's the way it works.
It's on him. He's at fault here. And I'm like, well, Caleb sailed it 6 yards over his head. And I don't know if you guys saw it. I get he's new. I get we're excited, but he sailed it 6 yards.
Well, we're built to defend because we all feel so great about Caleb.
Yes.
We're reluctant to criticize him.
Yeah.
And I don't think, listen, he's a pro. He's going to be fine. But when he throws those 2 inexcusable interceptions in Indy, I'm not going to overlook them and just immediately point to the booth.
Right.
Those are plays that he's got to make. Is the coordinator putting him in position every down to be the best he can be? The answer to that question is obviously no. But you can't ignore, just when things are going south, you can't take your eyes off of the players and only point them at the coach's booth. You gotta spread out and take a wide angle view and realize that 2 things can be right at the same time. Guys aren't making plays. Like, again, I'll go back to the goal line at Indy. Darnell Wright drops his head and whiffs on a block, and then on 3rd down, you've got your offensive coordinator designing a play for a little to block a big.
Yeah.
And then you run a speed option, which isn't the play I would have called, but then 4 of your offensive linemen are laying on the ground. Yeah. So when you put it all into the,
you got all of it on that drive. You got player execution, you got coaching scheme, and then you got it all together at the end.
And the funny thing is when you've got a ton of talent, it makes an offense, even a modest offensive coordinator, look better.
Yeah.
When you are struggling with talent and guys aren't doing their jobs, it makes a modest offensive coordinator look worse.
Yeah.
So these things it's always a combination of everything. But look, I can sit here and complain till the day is over about the inefficiency of the interior of their offensive line. But I also have a little breath left in me to say, hey, that OC did not put his guys in position to take advantage of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's where I think you got to, and when you hear Mercedes Lewis talking about, hey, we had to, a talk it out meeting about certain things. I mean, that doesn't bother me. I think that can be beneficial to everybody. But if I was stepping into
work though, that's the only thing that scares me. We always hear about the players only meetings or the leadership council meets with the coaches. It's usually like the mark in the season where I'm like, oh boy, this is not going to be good.
Well, this is the first thing I would say, Pat. I'd walk into that room if I was Mercedes Lewis, and I would say, starting with me, we all got to be better.
Yeah.
We got to be better at our jobs.
I
don't care what play comes in. Whatever you're asked to do, you have to execute that play to the best of your ability. And if you do your job and everyone's doing their job and it doesn't work, well, then the finger points right back at the offensive coordinator because the play isn't coming in to take advantage of what we're doing well. So I think, to me as a player, I would always say we need to be better. But I think it's also very beneficial for Caleb to sit down with Shane and say, hey, I'm comfortable with this. I think it's beneficial for Caleb to get with his offensive line and sit down and watch film and say, hey, here are my tendencies. When we get this look, I have a tendency to work left in the pocket, or I'm going to shuffle right in the pocket. So you, Matt Pryor, you're going to know where I'm at on this particular play. Just think, protect the inside. If you have to pick one or the other, protect the inside versus the outside, because there's a really good chance I'm going to stay firm right here in the middle.
Yeah.
So those are all things that are tendencies that if you sit and you watch film together and you do communicate, that stuff can get better. So I don't think I didn't take what Mercedes said as a big finger pointing contest.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was the case. I actually think it can be, I think you can get something out of it.
I think my question with that is, though, because isn't that what happens every single week? And you've been in the rooms and I haven't. So isn't that what happens with your team every single Monday? You go through the film, you see what was wrong, you talk about what you're comfortable with and not. When I heard that, to me, it was, especially with Mercedes Lewis and the leadership council involved, it's, okay, maybe Caleb doesn't feel as comfortable telling his offensive coordinator, I don't like what you're calling for me.
Yeah, I mean,
and then you got to mediate. You got to have the vets in there to mediate, like, hey, let the kid talk. Like that. That's what concerned me. And maybe I'm just reading too far into it, but every Monday should be, I don't like this. I don't see this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and those conversations should go on. And as they learn each other, that's where you start to learn tendencies and you feel better about each other and what's being expected of you. But, listen, and some people suggested, why is Mercedes Lewis having to tell the offensive coordinator to coach up his offensive line or criticize them when they're bad? Maybe that's, I don't, like
some people, it's not their personality.
That's a really good point. And look, maybe Flus does that behind, the doors in meetings, but he certainly doesn't do that
in the front.
Yeah, like they're not. But look, if I'm Shane Waldron, I'm asking Matt Pryor, sir, what are you doing? Block somebody.
Did you see that play?
Oh yeah. Who block one of these guys? One of these guys.
He looked at him. I know you saw him.
Right. So like maybe what Mercedes is saying, that Shane has to be more like, this is not acceptable.
Yeah.
You have to block somebody instead of, well, we'll get better at this. DeAndre Swift, there's a hole right here.
Yes.
Hit it.
Yes.
Hit the hole.
Yes.
I don't know if that was kind of the tenor of the discussion. But listen, you're all professionals. This is, it's how you make your living. Like, you have to be willing to have constructively critical conversations.
Yeah.
Without just dog cussing each other.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be Tibbs and Joakim out here.
No.
You know what I mean?
But that was a relationship that worked that way.
Yes. Yeah.
So like I can't sit and say, how they interacted with each other's the wrong way because it worked for them.
Right.
The problem here, it seems from an arm's length distance, is maybe there isn't as much of the Joakim Tibbs relationship. Maybe some of them need a little bit more of that. And maybe that was the message that, hey, listen, when we're whiffing on certain things and we're not getting what we need to get done, put a boot in our ass.
Yeah.
Which shouldn't be something that you have to tell your coaches. But again,
that's what concerns me. I mean, the last coach we had to tell that to was after Thibs, and that was Fred Hoiberg, and Jimmy Butler literally was like, please coach me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm dying to be coached here. Like, please.
Well, this is going to be an interesting game to watch unfold for a number of reasons. Like, Sylvia's called this a must win. When we all know mathematically it's not a must win to get to the postseason, but his message is spot on. You have to, I think, you have to validate all of the good things you thought about yourself earlier in the season coming out of training camp that were really good here. We can do this. But before you can validate it, you got to do it. Like, this team needs a huge, Stuart Smalley, I'm good enough, I'm strong enough, I'm fast enough, and doggone it, people like me moment.
Yeah.
Like, they need to have confirmation that what they're doing does in fact work. So against the Rams, a team that you should be able to move the football against, you need that confirmation. This is a really important game for them to go out there. I thought it was going to be last week against the Colts, but to go out there at home, and you'll have the benefit of the snap count will be on, you'll be able to control it as opposed to being in someone else's loud building. So that will help the offensive line and the quarterback. But you need to come out of this game, not just with a W, but you need to come out of this game having made progress on offense and everybody feeling better about themselves. And you can have those meetings on Monday and Tuesday about, hey, what did we like? What did we didn't like? Yeah. But it's not guys with their heads down, pissed off and yelling at each other.
Yeah, you can't have a Titans game here to me.
No.
You can't have and I'm not even saying 93 yards. I'm saying you have to have a game where it feels like the offense meant something to you winning the game.
Yes.
And not just they were there. Like, they came along for the ride. We got 6 interceptions. But they scored some touchdowns. That's cool. Like, you got to be able to capitalize on stuff. And that's my concern. We'll see what Sunday brings. What's your prediction for this Sunday?
I think they win. I think that
score prediction.
I picked them to win last week. I had them losing in Indy on Monday and Tuesday, and then I watched a ton of film, and I was like, there's no way that they won't get their running game going.
We were having that conversation in here.
There is no way that Anthony Richardson is going to get the best of this defense. He's going to throw it to him.
Yeah.
Check. He did. But we ran it 28 times for 63 yards, and we lost a turnover battle and scored 16 points. You're not going to go on the road with no running game, lose a turnover battle, and score 16 points. I will say this is a game 23-16 that the Bears win by a touchdown.
How many?
And they'll build on – well, they won't build on anything because there's nothing to build on. They will actually create some positive things offensively to build on going forward.
23 points from the offense, or is there some?
Oh, no, I'm not going to. Look, I was looking at these numbers now. Currently, through 3 weeks, I think they're averaging 17.7 points per game. But when you back out the punt return for a touchdown and the interception return for a touchdown, they're averaging 13 points per game on offense. So I'm going to say all 23 points this week are going to be attributable to the Bears offense.
Let's hope
which is tremendous progress.
23 is crazy progress. I mean,
and I'm going to stay patient, Eric. Stay patient, because I got a dinner date with my wife tonight, and I guarantee you that we're getting in the car at 7 for a 6:30 dinner reservation. So I'm just going to sit there. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to be patient, and that's just my DNA.
Do you now here's where we get the insightfulness of experience here in long terms in marriage and things like that. Do you set the reservation for 8 o'clock?
No, because my
and
wife
say
sets,
it's a 6:30.
My wife sets the reservation.
Dang it.
Yeah, I mean it's a rookie move for a guy who's been married 33 years, but I think it works better when I let her take control of it. And I preach patience, but I am in my office at home as the clock hits 6:15, and we're supposed to be out of the house at 5:45, saying, "What the is going on around here?" I just don't say it to her or around her. I keep it in my own little bubble, my frustration bubble.
What always gets me is when I'm waiting. This is my wife's go-to move. I'll be like, all right, we're gonna be a little late. It's fine. Then she comes running down the steps.
How does this look?
No, you look fine. Okay. She does that. We're good. And she'll look at me and she'll go, "You don't have your shoes on yet?" I'm about to flip a table. Oh, yeah, I'm about to flip a table. Right.
Well, I could just, how long have you been married?
9 years.
Okay, let me just tell you this. It doesn't get any better. Same comments are going to be made.
So learn patience. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. Or after being upstairs and being 15 minutes late for the reservation already, she'll look at me and go, "Is that what you're going to wear?" And I'm like, "Yes," and I'm not going back upstairs to change. If you want to sit at separate tables because I'm embarrassing you, that's up to you.
We can sit at separate tables. Yeah. I like that option. Oh, Tommy, we always love when you come on the show. Appreciate you coming on. As always, make sure that you guys tap in with him on the Waddle and Sylvie show. I saw a clip of you guys because Derrick Rose retired yesterday. I'm assuming it was from a Derrick Rose draft documentary. It was just floating around on TikTok, and it was you, Cap, and Sylvie talking about how easy of a decision it was to draft Derrick Rose over Michael Beasley.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is some years ago, 2000. It's got to be 09.
Yeah.
You looked good. You look good. You still look good.
Not so much.
You still look good.
But that was an easy decision.
Yeah.
I mean, you give Pax all the credit in the world for making that decision because other people have made the easy decision incorrectly. But to me, that was a no-brainer. I'm no basketball expert.
That was easy.
I'm the same guy, though, that thought Greg Oden was a better draft pick starting off than Kevin Durant. But I would still, to this day, say if he's healthy, if Oden would have stayed healthy, he did some stuff as a big man that were.
They had him, Brandon Roy, and LaMarcus Aldridge had a 750 win percentage when all three of them were on the court together. It was like 18 games.
Yeah,
because all of them had injuries, so you got to deal with that. Hopefully, we see better out of this Bears team this Sunday than Greg Oden or Michael Beasley. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and showing love. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. For Tommy Waddle, it's your boy Pat the Designer back at it again. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Bear down. One love. Peace.